Hi, it's Wave, and this is something that I want to do for every year for my writing journey. So I'm calling this my writing journey, and this is going to be year one. I actually started my writing journey last year in 2022 and was originally going to upload it, but things got so crazy last year as I was getting more content building and trying to schedule things while going to school that it just didn't happen. And also I had a very fear insecurity of talking on the camera. So obviously this year I have been talking through the camera and been slowly learning how to get more comfortable talking to it, but also using my vocal cords because I really don't talk that much in real life. I'm very introverted, and unless I talk to one of my close friends, which that's basically like a once a week thing because we're all busy with work, or in my case, going to school, writing a book, doing a YouTube channel. Also a fun way to look back of how far I've grown as a person, but mainly my writing. I've said it already, but writing my book, which is actually my first book I ever wrote. Well, technically not my first book because I actually started one years ago and never finished it because I was very insecure, lost, didn't know exactly how to format and structure a book. And also, when I did that, I was in high school and we were always stuck with expository essays. There was no creativity of building a structure of a play format, screenplay, or even like a little novella book. So because of that, I never venture out, but also I never thought of putting myself out there to search for it. So I had a lot more to say, but when I looked down the screen, I found out my SD card got full. So I'm redoing this. Never had this happen to me before. But at the same time, I kind of find it hysterical because now I can talk about it. What I was saying was that I got an accountability buddy last year or a year and a half before. I found out from what's her channel name? Blissbean, all about accountability buddies. So I actually gave it a go and met one of my friends to this day. So we were talking last year and we both were into the arts and all that. So I finally decided that last year I was gonna write my book, and I said I was gonna do it for a year. Well, I haven't finished it yet, but I actually learned a lot. So I'll be making a ton of videos about the whole process and what I'm currently doing right now through the first book. So stay tuned for that. I wanted to show for the first year of what I've learned and mistakes I made from 2022 of my writing journey. So I'm going to break it down into a couple of segments of what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what things I've adapted into my writing. So I found out from writing my first novel that I'm actually really, really good with dialogue. And I didn't recognize it until I was writing throughout the book that majority of the stuff that I've written on the first round was just dialogue. And I think it's because it goes to writing screenplays, which I'm still writing my own screenplays at the moment. I'm so used to that concept of how I can just hear my characters just speak and I just watch it through a back screen of them being filmed, but it's just inside my head. And so I can just hear the voices in my head talking and I just like write everything down. So I found that was pretty interesting about my writing. And when I think back to wanting to write stage plays when I was really little and we weren't allowed to for school reasons. Well, actually, I don't even know why we weren't allowed to, but that's something I always wanted to do. But I always had my head of thinking of what the characters would say and do versus writing like expository essays about research that I can't stand. Which now, since I write my novel, I actually do quite a bit of research now. Character goals. So for character goals, I always know what's the motivation of the character, what they're going to start with, what they're going to end with, or whereas I know the turning points. such as writing a book or a screenplay. I always know the concept of how it ends, how it starts, and the middle part. Though when it comes to the starting point, that's actually not my best, but I always know the ending of the story and the climax. That's just something that I do. I don't know if any other authors do the same thing, but when I was looking at some screenwriters break down the round table, they talk about their own strategies, whereas one said that he didn't write his screenplay until he had the title of his screenplay, which I found that interesting. But for me, it's like I actually put what I have like feeling of it and see if I can just change it later on or just keep or find another way to use it. Yeah, I found that was pretty cool that I inherently know that, which is actually a good thing, because if you don't know how the story ends or where the story's heading, you don't have a story to begin with. I tend to know more of like the turning point of the character to get to the point of the ending, but the main ending, not the little in-betweens. It's just fascinating to me that I can just do that. When it comes to active versus passive writing, I didn't realize like how much passive I was writing until I put some of my work into Hamilton editing writing. Is that website? That's something I need to definitely work on a bit more, which I have been throughout the year of last year, of just making a conscious effort to, but then also kind of confused me, whereas when can I use passive or not, because I know that even when you speak in the present tense, you have to use passive for special occasions. So I'm still trying to figure that out, but at least I figured right now that that's something I'm working on. Starting this story. When it comes to starting something new, whereas it's like starting the first chapter, starting the beginning of the story, or anything in general of like a new project I do, I always struggle doing just starting the beginning. Whereas if I had done it in the past, I can fly by it through easily, but it's just the first stage. Now I have gotten a little bit better with some stories that I've like is currently in the concept phase, in the planning, that I actually had the beginning. It's like, okay, I know where this is going, but from the beginning of 2022, it was such a struggle. Whereas where I put it into a screenplay, it's actually much easier. So I don't know if I should start adapting into a screenplay format or just try to get more and more comfortable of just getting used to starting a new chapter. I'm just weird. Mixing my writing with editing while doing the draft process, I didn't realize I was doing that quite often, because I was actually doing a writing challenge of Maggie Stiefvater. I think that's how you say her last name. I'll have the video up, so you can go check that out after this video. But basically, she does like mini edits, whereas for me, I cannot edit my book while I'm doing the draft process because they're actually two separate things. And I noticed that I just kept getting stuck on certain chapters over and over, and I could never progress to even getting half of the draft done. I'm trying to hold myself back from like editing, but if there's something that's just like completely bugging me that I just can't move on until I fix a little little paragraph or little incident of the story, then I'll just go ahead and do it. But for the most part, the editing, I'll leave that into the editing round of my writing. Another big weakness is procrastination. There's this YouTuber that she actually talks about procrastination isn't the same thing as writer's block, in which she actually broke it down and explained what the difference was. It actually made a lot of sense. I'm a perfectionist, which is really, really not a good thing. And I tried hard to like bring myself not down to degrade myself, but bring myself realistic that it's okay to make some hiccups down the road and through my writing process, because I'm still learning and I'm still kind of a newbie to the whole thing. And from her explanation, procrastination is just coming out of fear. That's why I just can't bring myself to write at times, Whereas writer's block is that you're in the story, you're in the zone, but you can't figure out exactly what's blocking you from overpassing to the next part of the story. So procrastination is something I always struggle with because I get slick at times and just get lazy, put like the bare minimum, which for writing a novel, it shouldn't be like that for me. It's just such a struggle. I don't know if like this is something all newbie writers go through of this stage of just procrastination, or is like even the professionals when they write like their 30th book, they still do procrastination. I know filmmakers do it, like Tarantino Quinto. I think I'm saying his name wrong, but he admitted that he procrastinates all the time for his screenplays. Now this is a section that I will put every year also for this writing journey. Things I've adapted into my writing routine. So one of the things I adapted is actually using brackets. Maggie Stiefvater actually uses brackets when she's writing her novel. If there's something that she just can't figure out, she'll actually put the brackets and then put something along the line of like character development or action scenes to be there, or some type of like a little input. That way she can move on to the story and get to the good parts, and then when she goes back to her writing for the second round, she can look at, okay, this is where I need to fix this, or it's like I have the little piece I need to put this there, and then just replace the brackets with that information. I thought it was such a genius idea that I actually tweaked it up for my needs. I just put the initials and also a little dash with the scene of what the scene actually is. That way when I go back to my notes in OneNote, I can just copy and paste it onto my writing software, which is Faden. Writing in the morning. So this was pretty interesting, and I go a bit more detail into the Maggie Stiefvater video. Now there are times where I actually have written in the afternoon, like say 2 or sometimes like 7 to all the way to 10 p.m. if I'm like really in the flow of it and I just can't stop myself from typing away from the story. But for the most part, I write in the morning. It kind of depends of like when I wake up, I try to give myself like 1 hour or at least 45 minutes of writing time. I find that writing in the morning, it just helps me force myself to actually write, whereas as the day continues to go by, I have like so many things I need to do, like college, taking care of some like Monday tasks of like my laundry, or some things that happen, like walking my dog when he wants to go. So life gets in the way, so doing the writing in the morning just lets me know that I actually written something down. I don't have to worry about not being able to write in the afternoon. I discovered OneNote when I was actually trying to find ways to plan my novel, and before I got into it and started using it, I actually had no idea what it was or how to use it. But I've come to really appreciate the software, though Microsoft does have issues of not updating, and now I found out that they're actually going back to an old of this part of the software ever since they changed to Windows 10, which I think is just so weird and dumb. But it actually makes sense of why the app version versus the desktop was so different. They need to fix that. When it comes to OneNote, I definitely section my stuff a lot, that way I can just keep myself organized, though I need to like reorganize it again sometime because I just made a mess while writing my novel. So if you guys want to have a video about my process of using OneNote for writing, or for whether it's for writing novels or screenplays, let me know and I'll do it. I noticed right off the bat while writing my first novel that I just had times where I just didn't want to be on my desktop and just wanted to write on my iPad. So I was trying to find an app where it can go all devices so I don't have any issues, and I went with Google Docs. And what was neat about it is that people actually made videos about how to make it in manuscript format, which is great, but I found out later on that the app doesn't actually keep it the way it is when you start copy and paste it. That's something I noticed like end of the year. So I was using it quite a bit, but it was so good for using Google Docs because I can change it to dark mode. It just kept my mind focused in the story. And I think it's because I read a lot of books from the library on my tablet or my phone, or even like using iBooks on dark mode. I don't like using it on the sepia tone or just the plain white. Also the fact that I can use it for all platforms. It's just easy to copy and paste. I discovered this tip from Jordan Peele. He actually talked about when he was writing his thriller screenplays, his process is always chasing the fun. So what I did was I actually made a page in OneNote for my novel called Fun Topics to Write About, or sometimes change it to Fun Things to Write, or even Fun Topics depending if I get lazy. Before I wrote my novel, I wrote like everything I wanted to write about that I just found like very interesting, whereas like I write stuff that I find interesting when it comes to the character's perspective, how they feel, or a scene that I have in my mind that I just can't get it out. So having that down beforehand was actually so helpful, because I found myself at times being stuck with it, of trying to write the novel chapter by chapter. So I said, it's like, okay, I'm not enjoying this, but I need to write something down. So what can I do? So I referenced on my OneNote, and I'm like, oh, I can do this because this is actually pretty interesting and has been on my mind for a while. So then I started reading that, and then I actually write quite a lot. It keeps me motivated, but also when I end up doing that, I actually get ideas for the chapter that I was stuck on, or more ideas for other scenes. So it's always a win-win situation, but as long as it keeps me writing and keeping momentum going, that's all I need. Writing down a section on OneNote called things that must happen keeps me refocused of the overall goals, and also the structure of how the pivotal points. I haven't been using it that much, but I actually started putting that somewhere in the middle or towards the end of 2022. Creating a small outline for my chapters just to help me get my muscle memory going and just build momentum, especially when I'm starting a new chapter. That way I can get a grasp of what I have my intentions are, but it can change. That's how writing is, because writing you think is going to be one way, and then it ends up evolving into something completely different, or something much better than what you envisioned beforehand. And that's just a beautiful thing to experience, even though you get frustrated when you have your bad days of writing. General idea of outlining, separate myself from the actual writing to see in a distant perspective of what's going on. That way I can see the pacing, move things around. So that's kind of a bit of a helpful thing. Now the things I will change into the new year of 2023. I read one of this writing craft books, and it talked about for building an outline. For every chapter you write, actually write one sentence summary of it. That way when you go back to the revision process, you actually know, it's like, okay, what exactly have you written? So I actually will implement that as well. Probably change it to fit my needs or something, but having that and getting the habit of doing that will actually save me so much time later on, because I couldn't remember what I've written for each chapter because it's just been such a lengthy process. But having that after I read the novel, I'll do a review on the book if I can remember what the name of the book was. Try shutting the door while I start writing. I did a Stephen King writing video as well, have that up on the channel too. His philosophy is having the door shut in the morning and then afternoon having it open. I noticed that when having the door shut, it cancels out any additional noises. My camera just kept out at 30 minutes. What I was trying to say was, it can't block out every single noise, but blocking out my brother's fan because it's super loud, because he has one of those, like, it's not a turbo fan, but it's one of those fans that the setting he goes for high speed, that way he can just feel it when he goes to bed. But I can hear it from across the room, and even when he has his door shut I can hear it. But when the door is closed I actually don't hear it as much, and it just centers me into like this little bubble world of my room that I don't hear anything but like the white noise of my room, if that makes any sense. So I'm gonna try and implement that, but also having the door shut just lets my family know that it's like, hey, I'm writing, leave me alone, do not bother me, because the moment people start knocking on my door, or when I didn't have the door open, people would just come in and I will lose my writing momentum because they have me do this and that, and it's so frustrating for a writer. And this is my writing process of 2022. If you have any tips on how I can improve my writing for 2023, let me know down below, because that way not only it will help me, but it can actually help somebody else who's actually writing as well. And I really want this to be a video every time I upload for the year. The stuff that I'm learning could help somebody else. Like Maggie Stiefvater's bracket tip, I can actually speed up my writing process of just writing my scenes out beforehand, and then when the time comes to that chapter and the scene, I can just throw it into the software because I already have it done. And then any additional stuff that I miss, I can just put it in and then go back to it later. That way I don't put myself in the editing process when it's supposed to be the draft, or even when I get to the revision process. This is all I have. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!